So good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Sorry for the changing room and everything. I'm really excited today because with this seminar, so Beyond Panic Arts in the Age of the Climate Crisis and Mobility Injustice, we are going to start a path of reflection regarding the complex nexus between migration, mobilities in general, and climate change. The climate change, the climate crisis, and global mobilities are two of the most defining and borderless challenges of our time. Whilst climate change has gained media new coverage globally, there is still little discussion of the political and social aspects of the climate crisis. For example, is nexus between with the mobilities and migration. The choice of how to communicate this phenomenon is never neutral. It provides differences, representation of the world, and plays an important role in the reproduction, recreation, and transformation of imaginaries and in the social construction of reality. While choosing appropriate words to describe such phenomena can help us understanding and interpreting them better, the use of inaccurate or distorted words can mislead not only the understanding of the event, but also emotion, decision, and action as a result. This word will be different if we change the representation of it. As Felvin Sarr, author of Afrotropia, with Achille Mbembe, says in his reflection of the contemporary world. In recent years, public and political discourses and the media have framed migration and climate crisis as through alarmist narrative, calling them contemporary state of emergency. The use of emergential and alarmist words for migration and the climate crisis is often depoliticized. It focuses attention on the immediate event and not in its deeper social, political, and economic causes. Framing this phenomena with this kind of narrative, it justifies ad hoc and short-term responses instead of a more complex and holistic approach that might be more appropriate of such global and systematic and big and political nature of such phenomena. We can say that climate change-induced mobility is an increasing salient and controversial topic, leading to the risk of sensationality positioning, including stereotypical framing of environmental migrants. All too often, the images conjunct are massive and permanent cross-border movements contributing to this apocalyptic and securitization of climate imaginaries that cast mobilities as a threat of Western society. Such distortion calls for challenging such narrative while offering alternative one based on evidence rather than preconceived notions. So Beyond Panic, Re-envisioning Climate Mobilities, this series of seminar propose a reflection on different perceptions and foster collaboration between journalists, activists, artists, researchers to generate possible counter-narrative of the current alarmist frame. The seminar of today is part of two intersectional projects. One is Rethink the Challenge, in which the collective research group Re-envisioning Mobilities partner, and the other one is Panicocene, Reframing Climate Change-Induced Migration. So Rethink the Challenge project aims to activate cross-cultural and cross-sectoral reflection on climate change and migration to foster a better understanding of the possibility of universal action in the world, while Panicocene investigates how media in Italy and the US have portrayed climate change and its impact on mobilities over the past 2 decades. And the overall goal is actually to analyze media, how media might lead to stereotypical climate change migrants, and propose a space of collaboration between activists, art, journalists, and research, the academia. So this seminar is part of this bigger picture that reflects on the nexus between climate change and migration, And I would like to invite you all to the next seminar that is going to be the 13th of February. I pass a paper that you can sign if you're interested. In that one, we will discuss with Andrew Baldwin and Mimi Scheller in relation with the racialization of the figure of environmental migrant. So I'm really pleased now to introduce the two speakers of today. So first of all, we have Gioacchino Orsenigo, that is a PhD student at the University of Naples L'Orientale, who is today is going to present his research on art and climate change. And then we will have Professor Pierluigi Musarò, that is a full professor at the Department of Sociology and Business Law at the University of Bologna, who is today is going to talk about arts, migration, mobilities, and new imaginaries. So thank you so much for being here, here in present and the one online. And Gioacchino, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really sad not being able to be there. Anyway, I hope. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. So let's start. First of all, I wanted to make a kind of a clarification, because obviously when we talk about art, we can mean many different things. Can include poetry, writing, theater, etc. But however, today I decided to focus only on some particular form of art, which is contemporary visual art. And this for a few reasons. That is, first of all, it would be too much probably, speaking about art in general. And because I deal with this kind of art in my research, I think it was interesting to give examples from this field. So visual art, as it can be clear, I think they have to do with everything that concerns sites. Okay, and I want to highlight two important and intertwined issues about sites. First of all, we must understand that the ability to see, and therefore to give shape and name to things, it is a political matter. It's a place of conflict. Being able to see something, being able to see, name, and frame, for example, the ecological crisis, is not an easy matter. And neither is how you see it. It may be trivial and very simplistic, but it's clear that I, as a white male in the West, will not perceive the climate change as someone in Bangladesh, or I don't know, as an indigenous Yanomami in the Amazon. So depending on who sees and what he or she sees and how they see, that is, from the positioning in the world they occupy, very different things can be seen. If the way in which the ecological crisis is seen is always that of the dominant subject, of those who have power, the way in which it will be faced will also be shaped from that particular gaze. This because the dominant subject imposed its vision, excluding and repressing other forms of visuality and problematization. Therefore, being able to see the ecological crisis, being able to give it a form as an object of study, of reflection, but also of perception, that is how we perceive it beyond what we know rationally, is not at all given. So this is the first problem when we talk about gaze, visuality, and this kind of idea. Another problem, so according to the expert and visual culture critic, Nicholas Mirzev, also, even if the reality of climate change and the ecological crisis is now more or less common knowledge, being able to visualize it is very complex. The body can not always make sense of what is presented to it. We cannot articulate what we perceive, so that the climate is wrong. I can maybe see by these quotes. So according to him, there is a particular aesthetic of the Anthropocene, so a particular form of visuality. Mirzev actually speaks about anesthetics. So because since we said, seeing is political, not seeing is also political. Over time, the eyes and the senses get used to seeing, perceiving something, for example, pollution, and we tend to naturalize it. That is, we tend to think that it's normal, that it is like this. The eye gets used, for example, and to do a really silly example, get used to no longer seeing a forest where there is now a factory, for example. In some case, we can also arrive to a moment in which we consider that kind of beautiful. So we are anesthetized. That is anesthetics. So on the one hand, we have the risk of it being anesthetized in our seeing. On the other hand, it's always political problem of how we see, from what positioning, so the very possibility of seeing. And so here, as you may have understood, visual arts can come into play. In fact, as Mirza states, art can become an instrument of quality. That is, of claiming a right to look, a right to see against this kind of anesthetization, which make us get used to it, and again, against the dominant gaze, which imposed its way of seeing. And to conclude, as the philosopher Donna Haraway would say, art become a tool for creating counter-narratives, new images of the world we inhabit. So art becomes a way to stay with the trouble, as Haraway says, with a world that it is transforming itself, to learn to live in it differently, to not fall into catastrophes more, but create alternatives. So art not only lets us to see differently, but already allows us to transform the world, creating alternatives, starting from an alternative way of seeing. So what I will do now is to show you the works of some artists or collectives to think together about different ways in which this counter-visuality can be expressed. Obviously, I won't pretend to be exhaustive, but just to give some input to the crowd. So I wanted to start with a known field, which is an artistic duo composed by Liam Young, who's a designer and curator, and Kate Davis, who's an artist, architect, and writer. Their research began from the contemporary city as a place where many of the contradictions and problems of the crisis we are going through are condensed. And as they write in their bio, they venture out on expeditions to the ends of the earth to bear witness to alternative worlds, alien landscape, industrial ecologies, and precarious wilderness. These distant and ignored landscapes are embedded in a global system that connects them in surprising and complicated ways to our everyday lives. Such a landscape of interwoven narratives, the studio uses film and animation to chronicle this network of hidden stories and reimagine the complex and contradictory realities of the present as a side of strange and extraordinary future. So in some ways, the two artists try to bring to light and make visible what is normally not visible. So every year, starting from 2008 and to 2017, they moved around the globe to document all this. So art in this case becomes a form of investigation, to be able to see what generally we are not used to see. So from the places where fast fashion is produced in India to the Atacama Desert, where the lithium needed for our batteries is extracted, passing through factories in China. And since we are almost in a Christmas mood, I wanted to show you this short video. Can you hear the sound?
No. No, we cannot hear the sound. Wait. I can try. No, wait once. We cannot hear the sound, but I can wait. Yeah, you can show.
No, but I think it's my problem. Like, wait a minute. Okay. Yeah. I forgot to include the computer audio. So, okay. Can you hear it? Okay, so as you may have understand, it's kind of a mockery of the Western consumerism and a criticism to just-in-time factories where like generally poor quality and often polluting commodities are produced, and sometimes produced by very low-paid workers that actually sometimes, as you may have seen, are very, very young people. So these commodities are produced in high quantities and then shipped in this container we saw at the end all over the world. And of course, consumerism and fast fashion and fast shipping market are among the causes of the ecological crisis, of course. So I wanted also to show this other video. I won't dwell too much on this because it would take too much time.
All right, welcome everyone to basically the announcement of Tesla Energy. All right. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is about a fundamental transformation of how the world works. But it's something that we need to do. And the solution is in two parts. Part one, the sun. we have and retain enough so you can use it at night. So
okay, I don't have time to show it completely, but this video was shot in Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia, where a lot of the lithium that charges our phone, our electric car is mined. And as you may have seen, lithium is extracted from salt lakes and then evaporated in huge tanks, which actually looks kind of beautiful, no? With all these colors and etc. It's not like the mine we are used to think generally, no, underground and dark and whatever. So and also this representation is a kind of anesthetic because we perceive those colors as beautiful and whatever. But what they did is that while the images continue to scroll, we hear Elon Musk talking about how horrible fossil fuels are, but also how easy it is to overcome them thanks to renewable energies and above all, thanks to the power walls that are the batteries capable of storing and conserve large quantities of energy that are produced by Tesla. Actually, to me at least, the effect is kind of alienating and destabilizing, especially when you hear Elon Musk explaining that the power walls are compact, practical, and take up so little space. The friction with the vastness of those extraction basins to extract the lithium that fuels those batteries is very evident and causes a kind of a sense of uncanny, of unease. The color of the basins provoke a feeling of strangeness and make their real meaning more visible, which is the ecological but also social cost of those very compact batteries. Even more so if the images and Musk's speech are made to resonate with the words at the beginning and at the end of the video, and which give the work its title, which is "We Power Our Future with the Breast Milk of Volcanoes," which actually refers to the mythology of indigenous people who say that this wide expanse of the Salares are the product of the mixture of tears and breast milk of a volcano who was inconsolable for the loss of its lover. So these words not only allow us to reconnect to the stories of the local indigenous population, but also to kind of another temporal dimension, to perceive like the space-time distortion that condense millennia and geological eras just for the completion of a few moments of the present time, and to condense complex geophysical stratification in these very tiny batteries. So the work allows us to question the way of seeing the ecological crisis, and therefore also make us reflect on the possible responses that the dominant gaze proposed. So electric cars that actually come with a cost. talking again about positioning. So positioning, we said, is where you are in the world and what social, cultural, political position you find yourself occupying in the world. And positioning form and give shape to our gaze. And in this regard, I want to show you the works of Senec's collective, Centro de Estudio della Naturaleza Extractiva, which was active from 2020 to 2023. And it was made up by Isabel Torres, Juana Guerrero, and Lucia Gagna, who tried to think about the ecological crisis starting from a feminist perspective and positioning. So what can we understand from this particular position regarding ecological crisis? Here, I will just show you a part of this video since we don't have too much time.
En el principio fue el cuerpo, un cuerpo solo, cuerpo entraña. No se distinguía de él ninguna otra cosa. No hacía frío ni calor, hambre no existía. Todo era cuerpo y cuerpo hacía sexo consigo mismo. Se engendraba más y más cuerpo. Una historia de conexiones subliminales que no celebra al cuerpo, lo succiona, lo somete, lo vacía, mientras mantiene una distancia necesaria para olvidar que está vivo, porque lo vivo y los deseos se funden en un paisaje insensible. Un deseo más allá del límite, un deseo ilimitado, una cosa negra, un día escondida en la tierra. Los blancos, testigos oficiales, penetran con tal que un chorro negro los deje tuertos, que le entra al cuerpo por los ojos, que oscurezca sus interiores, espese la sangre del animal que cada vez somos menos. Animales bien raros somos. Tenemos vecinos populares con probetas codiciosas de futuro sin futuro. El río sucio gusta y cuesta más que limpio. Por aquí poquito hay, poquito hubo. El oro negro se fue a fundir a los finales, a la periferia, ahí donde puro pingüino hay. Donde fuimos a pasear en camionetas rojas a un pueblo petrolero. Por suerte abrigada fuimos porque puro muchacho hay. Las casitas, la escuelita, los concursos y el pago de las cuentas de luz y gas las paga INAP. Ay, papito protector, que me trucas mi silencio por calor. Salgo a pensar a la pampa y me invento una cosmovisión que debajo hay un monstruo negro que vive en un cementerio vegetal.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna stop here. And so the works promoted by this group insist on the extractive perversion which takes on sexist, chauvinist, and predatory tones, like performance anxiety, the fear that it's not enough, the insatiable need for power, energy, to have more and more, are kind of accompanied by the extractive veracity, the libidinal and disturbing, penetrative tension of a masculinity that transforms bodies and territories in spaces on which to vent this predatory excitement. Okay, so Senec's research makes clear the profoundly chauvinist scaffolding that is part of the ecological crisis, caused by exactly by the continuous need for growth, for energy, for power, and that keep promising more and more of it without questioning it in its responses to ecological crisis. And so by doing this, it kind of reconnects the politics of bodies to the politics politics of territories, gender oppression, and ecological oppression. Okay, so this is another example of different perspectives of different cases when we deal with ecological crisis. Let's move on. We still talk about positioning, in this case about the meeting of different looks, of different gazes that can come together to create a new and different look. Entre-Dos is an artistic collective, and it's actually the union of two art collectives, Piccia, which is based in Lubumbashi in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Enough Room for Space from Brussels. The project aims to develop as a dialogue between artists who live connected to extraction sites and others who instead experiences seductive promises of capitalist economy and technology. So the idea of the project is to connect the two sides of the value chain that are often dissociated through the comparison between artists who belong to different realities. And precisely the fact of coming from opposite poles of the value chain allows these artists to engage in complex and layered dialogue and reflection. So they actually start from the case of the Manono site, which is a mining site in DRC, which was exploited since the beginning of 20th century, and today is at the center of international interest because it could become one of the largest lithium reserves in the world, and so fuel the ecological transition, which actually implies this kind of revival of form of colonialism, exploitation, extractivism, and so on, because it needs a huge amount of minerals. And so it is from here that the collective reflects on the different degrees of distribution of costs and benefits of the transition in the context of the ecological crisis. Positioning and the two poles of the value chain allows the collective to look at the ecological crisis in a critical way and questioning the responses that the imperial gaze has produced. This photo is part of a series by George Senga and shows the working and environmental condition of mining in Congo, which devastate entire territories and ecosystem, produce the toxicity that enters directly into the lungs and the vulnerable bodies of the workers. Or let's take this other example, which is called Tesla crash. And it's actually a copper wire Tesla car that was built in Lubumbashi. And this work tried to speak ironically to the industrial Tesla car, which of course one of the biggest consumer of lithium. And it refers to the widespread self-produced toys for children in cities in Congo, where e-waste and raw materials are more accessible to large population actually than consumer goods. So if fundamental minerals for new technologies are extracted from Congo, the country actually neither benefits economically from the extraction nor has access to this same technology. Or see, for example, this picture by Pamela Tolisso, which shows across a woman who worked in difficult conditions in artisanal mining, but inside a Tesla car. So making evident the friction between these two sides of the transition. This figure makes reflect on ecology as also a neo-colonial issue and allows us to reflect on the idea that the problem is also the degrees through which transition will ensure that a number of people in the global north will continue to live in ecological crisis, while other places and people will be increasingly excluded, spaces to be mined, to be exploited, etc. Okay, let's move on again. Caribbean Film Collective. It's a collective of indigenous people from the Northern Territories of Australia, and which also includes actually the anthropologist Elizabeth Povinelli. Well, as you see, it's a grassroots indigenous-based media group. Filmmaking provides a means of self-organization and social analysis for the Caribbean. Screenings and publications allow the Caribbean to develop local artistic languages and form and allow audiences to understand new forms of collective indigenous agency. Their medium is a form of survivance, a refusal to relinquish their country, and the means of investigating contemporary social condition of inequality. The films represent their lives, create bonds with their land, and intervene in global images of indigeneity. So I took these quotes by their website, actually. So in this case, I think I won't have the time to show you part of the movie, of one of their movies, but I will speak generally about them. In this case, art became a way to process a lack and let's say the constant colonial deprivation, the transformation of their land due to extractivism and due to ecological crisis. And it becomes a way to build an alternative way of living in a world that it is changing. So to keep existing with their cultural form in a world that is actually changing. So it's a way to process their resistance, their endurance. So art became a way to talk to Western people, but mostly it's a way for them to react to this changing world, to build their community, okay, their wounded community. So it's also a way to cope. They made a lot of these short films, short videos, to help themselves understanding how to keep struggling, so how to cope, okay. I wanted to show you this video, but I think I'm gonna skip because it's quite long, and so maybe we'll have more time for discussion later. And I'm gonna end with this. Okay. So I wanted to conclude with this work that kind of differs a little from those that we have seen so far. And then so I can leave the floor to Professor Musarò. And also this try to connect this part of the speech to the other side of the seminar, which obviously are migration. So I don't know if anyone knows this collective, but Clairefontaine is this feminist and conceptual artistic collective founded in 2004, if I recall, in Paris by Fulvia Carnevale and James Thornhill. It was actually inspired by the name of I think a famous French stationery brand. Anyway, the work called The Foreigners Everywhere, in Italian Stranieri Ovunque, consists of a neon sign translated into different languages, saying exactly foreigners everywhere. It is a work that was inspired by a flyer made by anarchist collective in Turin. And the work actually aims to reflect on the condition of the migrant, of the foreigner, not only as an economic condition, but also as an existential condition. So the work remains kind of sufficiently ambiguous to allow to a double reading, both as a xenophobic expression and as a manifestation, but also as a manifestation of a feeling of disorientation and non-belonging. So to feel like foreigners against any nationalist or supremacist ideology. So here Clairefontaine evokes the feeling of kind of never feeling at home in a globalized society, and reminds us how common the feeling of being a stranger can be. So the work is an invitation to reflect on the policies of exclusion and inclusion that influence the identity of who can define themselves as European, for example, and who cannot. So maybe apparently it's not a work that talks directly about climate and ecological crisis, but it is so in the moment in which it led us to connect all these colonial extractivist side of ecological crisis we talk about now to migration. And it becomes an invitation to feel like a foreigner, to not feel at home in a world increasingly in crisis. So it's an invitation to ask ourselves about what produces condition of being a foreigner, the economic crisis, the ecological crisis, etc., etc. It's an invitation to live and inhabit this crisis as a foreigner. So not to accept the imaginary of the emergency of the crisis, be it migratory, economic, ecological, cultural, or whatsoever, and not to accept nationalist, classist, racist solution, but to try to imagine alternative ways of living, to create, as Donna Haraway would say, alliances and kinships that are not based on blood, on God, homeland, and family, but strange alliances as foreigners who do not belong to any state, to any family, and can therefore create new relationships, an alternative way to inhabit this world in crisis, to rediscover a form of complicity, solidarity, and struggle among people who feel like foreigners in this world and want to change it. So I'm gonna stop here and leave the floor to Professor Musarò, and I thank you very much for this experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gioacchino. I'll give the floor now to Pierluigi Musarò, and then we will have time. And then we will have time for questions.
Yes, in the meanwhile, Elena prepared. Thanks, Gioacchino. And I think that, I mean, it's very complementary because you were talking about the politics of the gaze and the right to look as a space of conflict. And I think that, yeah, but we have to share the screen with perfect. Thanks very much. And I think that also talking about mobility justice and about migration, when we talk about border, the spectacle of the border, we move between hypervisibility and invisibility, because at the same time, the border is something that unveil and hide. So what I would like to do very, very briefly, I mean, it's part of the class and it's part of this seminar, try to establish a dialogue while we discuss about climate change and mobility justice. So first of all, it's about the perception, right? When we talk about climate change, as well as when we talk about migration or mobility justice, I mean, we have wrong perception. Just think, for example, I mean, here you can see in many, many countries, the perception about how many immigrants do you think there are in the country, it's very, very different than the statistics. Why this? Of course, the choice of discourses, narratives, images, the role of media, it's super important. When we talk, for example, about these people, who are them? Are they refugees or are they migrants? Because word choice matters in terms of where these people come from, why they are here, what about their future? And for example, just to have an idea, during the so-called migrant crisis in 2015, BBC decided to use only the word migrants, saying, oh, but these people are on the move, they are not refugees. While Al Jazeera was saying, no, these people come from this country, so they deserve asylum. And so think about the battle of this, just in terms of terminology. And then when you decide if, you know, what kind of political space would you like to occupy? How do you represent these people? Are these people numbers, statistics, are invaders, are a lot of people, are just a little kid like Aylan Kurdi, 3 September 2015, and what he provoked? And how do you represent these people? This way? Or, for example, the same Aylan Kurdi, but this way, which means someone who is taking care of something that is cruel, that is shocking, that is a shame, or again, moving from the humanitarian to the securitarian one, when we use images in media, like Farage, for example, for the Brexit, right? Manipulating images, in order to show that there is an invasion and in order to show that European Union is not able to deal with it. So, or for example, after the Bataclan, when, you know, like for example, the Sunday Mail, Paris jihadis got in as fake refugees. Again, who are these people? How do we represent them? Who own the narratives about that? Usually, just to close this kind of theoretical part about media representation, usually when we talk about migration, we talk about an emergency imaginary, we talk about a narrative that kind of move between the humanitarian one, pity, compassion, vulnerable victim, and the securitarian narrative about fear, border control, national public order, migrants as invaders. Here we have the spectacle of the border. The spectacle of the border can make some kind of hyper-visibility where we are the good one, we are the angels of the sea, as we have seen in Mare Nostrum, where we are the saints who can adopt a distant someone and feeling very good. But at the same time, this hyper-visibility is hiding the ethical and political responsibilities of our governments. Or what we have seen in the last years, that the narratives about this kind of realities become again invisible. And so we pass from the humanitarian compassion to the humanitarian crimes, where the idea is that showing solidarity to these people is something problematic. Kind of recognizing that there is a moral geography of the world is problematic because there is a sort of crimes. This is very important because when we talk about the media agenda, we are talking about the public opinion, we're talking about people, group of interest, media, and then there is an influence on the policy agenda, on politicians and on policy outcomes, which means law, which means death and life of certain people. To arrive to the part of art, why, I mean, I'm introducing this just to say that usually we depict this as a problem of narratives, but we don't recognize, for example, the passport index. We don't recognize that the right to move is one of the least respected in the world. And talking about the legacies, the colonial legacies about this right to move, usually the populist narrative on migration is number proof. I mean, it's more about emotions. And I mean, many kind of politics. Look what is going on in Gaza right now. And it's all about the emotions, about the narratives, and not about the facts or about the context and the history of colonization. But again, here, the story that the liberal leaders tell is simple, right? It's very emotional, it's powerful. It's like Europe faced a barbarian invasion and only the right has the will to stop it, right? What is going on in the European government? So I think that what we need is a better story and better policies. Otherwise, I mean, we can fight, we can show numbers, statistics, international law, but if we are not able to deborder the bad narratives and to tell better stories, I mean, there is no way to go beyond this. Now, what is the role of art as a form of participation resistance? What is the relationship between art, any kind of art, I mean, performing arts, visual arts, and we will see different kind of examples, in order to, Jacques Rancière, for example, say, to modify the realm of the visible, the sayable, the possible? How can we reconfigure the fabric of our experience? How can we deconstruct and recognize the voice, the dignity, the life, and not just the naked life? How can we talk about hospitality and cosmopolitanism in terms of politics? I will show you like many examples. I can't go really in depth, but I would like to have a dialogue on that about different kind of arts. I mean, let's start, for example, with very simple. I mean, in the last years, graphic novel became very popular. And so graphic novel is something that even a teenager can read and in a very enjoyable way could discover something about the reality of the war, talking about borders and the refugee crisis. For example, this Welcome to the New World is very interesting because it appeared in 20 episodes in the New York Times. Then it won the Pulitzer Prize. And then there was also an exhibit. And it's interesting to see how like a graphic novel could be a sort of documentary winning a Pulitzer Prize. And then, for example, this is in London, in King's Cross, how it also can become an exhibit. And so people are invited to go there to enjoy a moment about art, but at the same time, to be committed, to observe. There is an ethics of showing and there is an ethics of seeing, right? So the idea is we decide to show something and not other aspects of the same issue. And also in the audience eye, there is an ethics of seeing. When we go, for example, to the cinema and we watch in these days, we think about the success of Io Capitano by Matteo Garrone, but also Human Flow, Highway Way, Fuoco a Mare, and many others. How can we use cinema, for example, in order to denounce, in order to show what is going on in Africa, in Libya, in the desert, in the Mediterranean, here with the reception centers, in the detention center, for example? How can we use public art? This is, for example, Blue, who is a writer from Bologna, who use art as a subversive practice on the border. Here you can see, for example, the flag of the European Union in Melilla, which is a very important border in terms of Mediterranean, Europe, and Africa. And you can see this kind of flag, for example, also the way Banksy reproduced the same flag, which is, I mean, is again public art, is an image that was attributed to Banksy showing floating bodies forming the European flag, which I think is also another way to invite people to be aware about what does it mean to be proud to be European. What about to deal with the border? The same Banksy, for example, in the jungle in Calais, show here the son of a migrant from Syria, right? Steve Jobs, one of the most powerful, innovative, rich American guy. He was the son of a refugee from Syria, or the little child, the migrant child during the Biennale in Venice. It's going to insert some element that invite us, that force us to think in a different way on the same topics. We have seen this kind of art also where your colleague, Patrick Zaki, was in prison in Egypt. And so we have seen also the power of using art in the center of the city to put what is going on outside in other places, in other countries, at the center of the political space. We can use, for example, different way to tell what is going on and showing the B side of a topic. When we talk about migration, refugees, asylum, we are talking about borders, but we are talking also about detention center. We are talking about many places, for example, in this case in the US. But if I think, for example, in Europe, we can use this kind of technology like map as, for example, forensic architecture, which is a research agency based at Goldsmith University. Lorenzo Pezzani is our colleague who works in this. What they do, they investigate human rights violation committed by states, policies, militaries, corporations, and they do this kind of open source investigation through digital and physical models, 3D animation, virtual reality. So they even go to exhibit, they promote exhibitions in art and cultural institutions, but at the same time, they are investigating and they are showing what is going on in some places, and they even present this investigation in international courtroom, in parliamentary inquiries, at the United Nations, in tribunals. So again, it's important not only to do investigation, but also to try to denounce this. Another nice example is this big giant. I don't know if are you aware about this, the little Hamal, the journey. This is a big puppet that moved from Syria and through this path, you can see Turkey, Greece, Italy, arrived to Manchester, and was very interesting because not only it traveled for 8,000 kilometers with people, with different people going with this big puppet, but what this puppet did was to make visible, to dramatize the refugee crisis, the refugee children's stories, and in every town, in every village, is meeting people, mayors, activists, researchers, in order to create a public moment to discuss about that. And you can see, for example, when they passed from Rome, they stopped with the Pope. They were also night in Bologna, I remember, in Piazza Maggiore, in Montagnola, organizing. I mean, this was also an excuse to organize public moments. Something very similar was organized by this Belgian collective of artists, the inflatable refugees, in many different cities around the world. Again, a way to make it visible. In Amsterdam, there is this other project, which is very nice because what they did through an NGO, they saved a migrant boat, a real one from Lampedusa, and they are using this migrant boat in Amsterdam, in the channels, in order to organize a sort of migrant tour. So in this case, are refugees who are tour guides for tourists, and they show you the city, but through their eyes. We can see, for example, public art as the Porta di Lampedusa by the Italian artist Mimmo Palladino, which is in Lampedusa and was created in order to see through the door towards Africa, or for the Africans arriving through the door towards Europe. But something similar was organized by Calliope Lemos, a Greek artist in Berlin. As you can see here, the idea is recycling and resignifying this kind of regime around migration, and again, kind of calling for a critical gaze to put at the center of the public space Berlin, the heart of Europe, the wasted lives of these invisible people, this is Ai Weiwei, in a way that force politicians, citizens to think about that. This is in Texas, and here they put cage containing models of kids, but this was a way to protest also against the Trump politics. I mean, there are many. I will just show a few one, and then I go to conclude. This is an Istanbul-based artist, a Turkish one, who took this list, which is a list that is published every year by the NGO, which is called United for Intercultural Action. So they produce this list where we find almost 40,000 name and surname of people died while trying to cross the border or just arrived in Europe, and you find their name and surname, why, where, when they decide to commit suicide or drawn or were killed. And so, for example, The Guardian published this list that you can find online, and these artists transform this list in a sort of public art. Here, for example, in the Liverpool Biennale. And of course, when you transform it in a public art, then public, I mean, people passing from there, they can even do this. Invaders, not refugees, right? I mean, they can express something that is not the way you are. Or, for example, Gipi, an Italian artist, decide to read all the names during the international festival in Ferrara and transforming this list in a performance, right? We can talk about museum and how to decolonize a museum. Nicolas Mirzoeff was our guest. The last one is a very interesting museum of contemporary art in Texas, I think, and they created this collective between Texas and Mexico, which is called Sinuelas, Detention Nation. I mean, we have no time, but if we go on the video, you can see how they constructed this museum, where they try to show in the museum what does it mean to cross this border, to pass from Mexico to Texas. What does it mean to be separated by the children, to risk the life, but again, in a very artistic way. So the role of art, it's very important in terms of negotiation of the meaning. Art, Chantal Mouffe says, is an agonistic space where, for example, counteract hegemonic discourses and foster conflicts, negotiation, valorization of diversity. Chantal Mouffe focus a lot the analysis on arts, all kinds of arts, as political and intercultural spaces for participation. And it's important because all these kind of artistic practices, artistic initiatives, can be considered what Eisen and Nielsen define acts of citizenship. What's the juridical, what's the legal meaning of that? I mean, in the now, maybe it's not so high, it's just art, right? But it expands the realm of the possible. Citizenship. A friend of mine say, you know, I'm an artist. The moment I thought about something, it already exists. So I don't need like you to demonstrate with statistics, whatever, you know, I'm an artist. But in the moment I'm doing this, I'm really expanding the realm of the possible. And for example, in this case, what the relationship between citizenship, the rights to have rights, Hannah Arendt say, or the cultural citizenship, to recognize someone who belongs to our house, to our territory, to our nation. That could be even just an emotive, an ethics, a political nation. I would like to conclude with a few examples of a project that we realized here in Bologna a few years ago, Atlas of Transition. It was a European project with many partners, also our Polish partner and Italian partner, Cantieri Meticci, were in this project. And it was very interesting because in a few years, like 3 years, we organized a lot of festival, installation, workshop, summer school, production of arts. And what we have seen, we tried to work together in a very transdisciplinary way, researchers and artists, and try to produce not only knowledge, but also installation initiative, festival, theater, performance, choreography, dance, in order to expand the symbolic and physical meaning of belonging of Atlas of Transition. Just a couple of examples. Cantieri Meticci, I'm very happy Pietro is here, is the director of Cantieri Meticci. is a theatrical company in Bologna. They work a lot with refugees, and they work a lot with this topic, creating a performance, initiative, festival, whatever, about what does it mean, borders, human rights, colonialism, imperialism, how to recognize the real stories of these people. And during the project, what Pietro did was to take the Negro de Narcissus, which is a romance, right? It's a novel, and to rewrite together with other people, including our students. This is our class of humanitarian communication of 3 or 4 years ago. So there were students like you here, no, in our field, but you know, we try to work together in terms of what this kind of sentences, images give you. How can we create a movement? And then Pietro, with the actors through the workshop, transformed it in a spectacle, in a book, where people were paying 10 euros to go and watch a spectacle. So, I mean, real theater that I paid to go there, but at the same time, I learned something. At the same time, I'm forced also to move something within me. I'm forced to challenge what was obvious before. Again, many other examples, but I would like to conclude with a couple of examples with Tania Bruguera, who is a Cuban activist. We created this referendum. Referendum was a referendum, like a 10 days performance in Bologna, where there was a big outdoor with this statement, borders kill. Should we abolish borders? And then people can vote, yes or not. I mean, again, from the legal perspective, this is nothing. But for 10 days in Bologna, in 15 different places, people were invited to discuss about borders, about people dying, and to express just a yes or not. Again, it's a performance. It's not a real referendum, but create something, move something. And the same artists, we create also the School of Integration, which means that during the festival, we create a safe space, 1 hour every day, where we invited other communities in Bologna, Chinese, Eritreans, Somalis, Senegalese, Ukrainians, to use the space to do what they want. It's not me asking you to do a workshop of, but it's you who decide how to use. And you can talk, as it happened, you can talk about colonialism from the Eritrean perspective, or you can invite people to sing in a karaoke, as the Chinese people did, or to depict the eggs for the Orthodox Easter, as the Ukrainians did. So it was very interesting, this idea of, you know, reverse. To conclude, arts, in this case, represent a symbolic and physical space where to problematize and tackle forms of exclusion and social inequality through innovative and critical instruments. It gave life to unconventional relations, the karaoke with the Chinese, the workshop with the Senegalese, how people find a way to challenging the negative representation of migration and promoting inclusive and collaborative space of expression and artistic creation. That, at the same time, become a space of resistance, of disruption, of negotiation. How can art create relationship, doing something together, a workshop, being part of the same spectacle, not only as audience, but working in audience engagement, audience development, enlarging, creating a theatrical place in the periphery out of the theater and bringing the refugees into the main theater of the city. That was something that we did and was very interesting. And how, for example, this challenged the idea of cosmopolitanism, of citizenship. This one is the last one, and then I promise I conclude. Was very interesting, was next to the reception detention center, CPR, in the periphery of Bologna, where the refugees are. 400 refugees are there in this place. And these DJs, Trust, they create a big playlist asking to the refugees their beloved songs and to the citizens who live there and who they don't want to see the refugees because they have already their problem. So that night, you can see here, there were many refugees here and many residents here, and there was this kind of tensions. But then suddenly with the music, they all start to dance together. And was magic because you can say, yes, okay, but it happened like once, 1 hour, but it happened again. And if it happened then for 1 hour in that place, could happen again. Thanks very much. Okay, Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pierluigi. So I give the floor to you. If you have any question, I actually have one question for both of you. So I'll start just because I would really know your opinion regarding it. We talk about climate change and migration, but we talk and art, but we talk about these topics separately. So I asked Gioacchino and then Pierluigi, why do you think there is so little artwork related with the nexus between climate change and migration? And do you think it will be useful to interrogate art of this nexus, or you think it's better to, you know, keep them separate, or you think that I don't know, climate migration is just a specific, a too peculiar category, so it's better to talk about, you know, the two phenomena separately? So why do you think there is little artwork on the nexus? I don't know who wants to start. Gioacchino?
Okay, well, it's obviously a really important question, and I don't know exactly how to do this. I think that it shows like how we are still used to frame these two problems as two different problems, and so this tendency we have to perceive this problem as an emergency that has to be dealt with in separate ways that are not connected. This is particular, like, political mean to avoid complexification of what it is happening. Because obviously we know that migration and ecological crisis are connected. And so, of course, we do need to answer to the other side of your question. Yes, we do need art dealing more with this connection and to complicate more and more the, in my opinion at least, the colonial side of which is actually what really connects ecological crisis and migratory crisis. I don't know if Pierluigi wants to add something.
Yes, I think maybe I can use this one. Yes, I agree. I think that first of all, there is a problem of being aware of, right? So, I mean, during summer, we host here Bertus Bocciani, and he was saying, for example, I met many refugees who are not aware that they are refugees because of climate change. Because, you know, climate change is so complex that sometimes climate change, then it becomes a conflict, it becomes a draw, it becomes poverty, scarcity, whatever. And so he's saying many people are moving, but they are not aware about, you know, the link. And so I think that when we talk about climate change, yes, I mean, it's very rare to be able to focus on the complexity and the intersectionality. And as migration, we usually focus on the symptoms, right? There is the emergency imaginary. And so until we are not forced to really understand what does it mean, for example, our passport, the citizenship, the colonial legacies, or our responsibilities in terms of pollution and, you know, the effects of this, I think that making visible, even for art, but here, I mean, it would be nice to talk with artists. I mean, making visible is also creating discomfort, right? It's challenging our safe zone. So in this case, I think that it's not easy. And at the same time, we think about the criminalization, because we are talking about the criminalization of migrants. We are talking about the criminalization of people who are in solidarity with migrants, but think also about the criminalization of the activists for climate justice, for example. Again, these people who are people who are kind of raising awareness about a common problem, or are they just criminals who are destroying, are disturbing the public space? So I think this is a big issue. And I invite also you all, if you have ideas about that, to share it.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I have a question about the impact.
Can you come here just to talk so we can hear like people at home? Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So my question is about the impact of these forms of art. So as the professor said, there is two ways to solve this problem, to change the stories and to improve the laws of the states. So my question is, I think it's clear that these forms of arts can change the stories and have an impact of citizens, and also changing the narrative between citizens and the refugees. But can these forms of arts change the laws? So since maybe 2015, when we start to see these forms of arts in migration and climate change, has something changed? Like, has these forms of arts impacted the laws? It's an open question. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very open
So Gioacchino, you first.
Thank you. Well, I don't think we have to like think only in this way. So art is part of a general struggle. Okay, so it is one of the forms that this struggle, this fight, take shape. Okay, so it's not like a direct link after changing the law. Okay, art is a part of a more complex activist and militant work to make people more aware of what is happening, to make people wanting to do something, okay, to organize, fight, okay, like European fortress, climate crisis, and whatsoever. So I think we have to think it in a more broader sense of what is the role of art. So it's not a direct link, art, law. No, it's more complex, like communication and linking between very different aspects that can be shown, like through art, but also in some kind, sometimes to I don't know, journalistic investigation, to demonstration, to or going, or I don't know, lawyers going to the to defend migrant people. It is a complex. It's not just a single, a single act. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think, but I'd like to invite also Pietro to answer to this question, because I think that you have a lot of experience in this term. But I think that, I mean, what art can do, it's really to expand something in terms, for example, of belonging, of capacity, of citizenship. I mean, if I think, for example, about the second generation in Italy, people who are, I mean, Italians, but they have to ask for citizenship when they are 18. Or many other cases in which these people, I mean, you do not even perceive them as different, but they are legally different, and you are not even aware. I think that art has the power to create this space that is a real space where you can meet and share part of your life, part of your belief, part of your stereotype, prejudice with other people that otherwise you don't. I don't know, I mean, I did some laboratory with Cantieri Medici in Centro Stalin. I mean, being every Thursday night for 2 or 3 hours with other people who are refugees and other people like me, who are professors over there, to do art, to do a workshop of theater, it's interesting because it's a way to do something together, to share stories together, not because you are a refugee or you are in reception centers, but because we are in the same workshop doing something together. And then I think there is a way to create a relationship that goes beyond the student, the professor, the Italian and the foreigner, the refugee and the educator. But really, Pietro, if you want to say something, please come in. I think that you have, because Pietro, I mean, it's decades director of this theatrical company that work mainly with refugees. And what is very interesting is that he created this format that is not just doing theater within the theater, but is to bring theater outside of the theater in every place of the city.
Thank you. Well, for me, it's very important where theater or art is done, because the biggest part of cultural place or artistic place, in my opinion, don't change anything. In many cases, it's a question of artistic career, the career of the artist. And in many cases, many artistic institutions, well, are done, do not change anything. It's, for example, the theater audience can digest whatever we propose. They can, okay, it's an art problem. It's a question of aesthetic. This was a good show, interesting, okay, very new, but about the topic, the audience, after a few minutes, have forgot everything. Or for me, it's very problematic, this, because many cases we try to study and to do experience, but it's a market. And in many cases, it maintains the status quo. It's done to maintain, do not change anything, to maintain the kind of equilibrium, yes, the status quo. That's why, for example, in many cases, we talk about, we white people talk about immigrants. We substitute our voice with our voice, their voice. Can subaltern talk, speak or Spivak. It's a good, it's big problem. So, well, for us, our attempt is first to mix people. So to try to have, to create some community of those who have nothing in common. So to create groups, communities of very heterogeneous people who are the authors, the writers of the play, of the speech together. So for me, it's very important to do art in a communitarian way, in a collective way, not one by one, not in an individual way. And for example, Pierluigi talked about Narcissus, the Negro of Narcissus. We wrote together, we rewrote Joseph Conrad together. It was a company composed by 4 African actors, 4 Italian, the Iranian scenographer and the illustrator, and we tried to write again Conrad, to deconstruct and rewrite together in a collective way, with a lot of different point of view. First. Second, for us it's very important to try to join what is intimate of each one of us with this very big topic. Because for me, climate change is something to be. I need to try to join, to link something more little about my experience, my way of living with this big topic. If it's only a show about a big topic, installation, it's too much. I can. It's like in many cases, Luna Park. Oh wow, beautiful video, very interesting. But in many cases, it's very difficult to link something, an intimate experience, something already important for us with the topic. But our duty is this: to join this different level of the speech. Third, and I finish, to use the public space. For me, the only art with a meaning is in the public space, in the street, in the park, where everyone can join, can have an experience, especially people very far, very distant from art process. If we are able to involve normal people, if we are able to involve them in their place, not in our place, in our cultural place, in their place, we have to go in their community and to start having a dialogue and to build something together with many different points of view, many different experience about the same topic. Then, okay, something art can change. Otherwise, it's a big show. It's just money, movement, and career of people, etc. And nothing changes.
Thank you so much, Pietro. Thank you. I see Melissa has her hands up. Melissa?
Yes, thank you very much. I tried to turn on the camera, and I completely agree about what Pietro was saying, and I think that, as he was saying a little bit, the question is not only where, but also who, because the projects that you presented, both of you, they were a bit mixed in the sense that there were some projects that were made by the artists, Western artists, sometimes very well paid and famous artists, and other ones that were made by collectives that were by people of the move. So I think that this is also a key, no? And who is doing what? Because although, I mean, also Banksy, for example, he made Dismaland, that was this, also Pietro just named Luna Park, an amusement park. And Dismaland was this big amusement park that was made by Banksy, sorry. And there was also this boat full of statues of migrant people that was crossing this lake, that was, of course, calling now the crossing of the Mediterranean Sea. Or just think about all the arts that is made on the wall between Israel and Palestine, that was very negotiated, because some of the projects that were there were hated by the people from the camps, from Palestinian people, and there were also some forms of attack from the camps towards the wall because they didn't agree on that. So I think that not only where but also who is doing art is a key issue to understand this, and maybe it's also a partial answer to your first question, Elena, no? Why there is not still not a lot of arts about climate change and migration. Maybe because if we are waiting for the protagonists that are people on the move, that are experiencing climate change, no? They are moving because of this. Maybe, as you said, since there is not a recognition about this connection, maybe we need to, I don't know, to develop further a critical reflexivity and to wait from work that come directly from people on the move.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Because we have 3 minutes left. Okay, so if there are no questions, thank you so much. I'll do another applause for Gioacchino and Pierluigi. And I would like to remind you our next event, the 13th of February, is going to be online, so only online, and there's going to be a first part of workshop to deconstruct imaginaries, personal imaginaries on the figure of the climate migrant. And then there's going to be Mimi Scheller, that is a theorist of mobility justice, and Andrew Baldwin, who studied a lot and researched a lot on the racialization of the figure of environmental migrants. And he wrote recently, last year, a book titled The Others of the Climate Crisis, related with this lost sense of humanity while we talk about climate change and migration, when we see always as the other that is it could be migrating related to climate change, and we are not considering ourselves as possible future migrants due to the climate crisis. So thank you so much. I don't know if you are interested in this event. Please sign the sheet over there. And thank you again for being here and for the two speakers.
Thanks, Elena. Thanks, Gioacchino.
Thank you.
Grazie, Gioacchino.
Ciao.
Ciao.
So see you all on Thursday at 11. Be on time so that we will have more time.